अस्सलाम वालेकुम एंड वेलकम एवरीवन हमारे आज के इस डिस्कशन में ये नहीं करना चाहेंगे। हमारे स्पीकर हमारे बीच में मौजूद हैं, लेकिन बात शुरू करने से पहले, फॉर्मली प्रोग्राम को शुरू करने से पहले कुछ चीज़ें थी जो मुझे लग रहा था कि हमको डिस्कस करनी चाहिए। जैसे कि एक चीज़ जो हमको एक्नॉलेज करनी चाहिए जब हम अरब वर्ल्ड की बात करते हैं या स्पेसिफिकली जब हम पैलेस्टीनियन कॉन्फ्लिक्ट की बात करते हैं, तो कुछ एजम्पशंस हैं जो हम अपने साथ कैरी करते हैं। ये एजम्पशंस दे आर नॉट नेसेसरली ऑर्गेनिक। ये एजम्पशंस कुछ एजेंडा के साथ क्रिएट किए गए हैं। अक्सर उन एजम्पशंस को इन्फोर्स करने के लिए बहुत मेहनत की गई है। मसलन के ये एजम्पशन के पैलेस्टाइन इज द बिगेस्ट एनिमेटिंग इशू फॉर ऑल ऑफ द अरब वर्ल्ड, या ये एजम्पशन के अरब्स कैन नॉट टॉलरेट एनी Jewish presence in historic Palestine, या सबसे बड़ा assumption के इजराइल इज अ वल्नरेबल डेमोक्रेसी जिसको के एक बहुत हॉस्टाइल रीजन में जिसको मुस्तकिल इंटरनेशनल सपोर्ट की जरूरत है फॉर इट्स मेयर सर्वाइवल। तो इस तरह के कुछ assumptions हैं जो कि जो भी इंटरनेशनल कमेंटेरिएट है जो अरब वर्ल्ड को देखती है, अरब वर्ल्ड पे बात करती है, कुछ इस तरह के assumptions के साथ कैरी करती है अपने आप को। लेकिन उसके साथ हम देखते हैं कि पिछले कुछ सालों में there has been a rapidity of events जिसने इन assumptions को काफी शैटर भी किया है, कई जगह रीइंफोर्स भी किया है, बट डेफिनेटली अब बहुत ज्यादा उनको क्वेश्चन करना शुरू किया है। फॉर इंस्टेंस पैलेस्टीनियन कॉज को लेकर के, स्पेसिफिकली पैलेस्टीनियन नेशनल एस्पिरेशंस की लेजिटिमेसी को लेकर के पूरी दुनिया में पब्लिक सेंटिमेंट फेवरेबल हुआ है, लोग उसकी लेजिटिमेसी को तस्लीम करने लगे हैं। लेकिन एट द सेम टाइम यू कैन सी के the Israeli occupation has become more entrenched than ever before. पहले से कहीं ज्यादा entrenched हो गया है और ज्यादा irreversible लगने लगा है, और इसमें कहीं ज्यादा जो पैलेस्टीनियन स्टेट का भी किसी लेवल पे आपको, जो पैलेस्टीनियन अथॉरिटी है, स्टेट तो नहीं, पैलेस्टीनियन अथॉरिटी और अरब लीडरशिप का भी कोल्यूजन आपको दिखेगा। तो एक तरफ तो एजम्पशन है कि अरब लीडरशिप पैलेस्टीनियन कॉज के लिए कुछ भी कर सकती है, पैलेस्टीनियन नेशनल एस्पिरेशंस के लिए किसी भी हद तक जा सकती है। दूसरी तरफ आपको ओपनली दिखता है कि वी आर एंटरिंग एन एरा जहां पे एक नए तरह के अलायंसेस डेवलप हो रहे हैं, जहां पे जो नए रूलर्स हैं अरब वर्ल्ड के, वो बहुत ब्रेजनली वॉशिंगटन पे उनकी जो नीड है, वॉशिंगटन की जो नीड है, बहुत ब्रेजनली उसको शो कर रहे हैं और इजराइल के लिए और ज्यादा अकोमोडेटिंग और एक्सेप्टिंग होते जा रहे हैं। इतना ओपनली कभी भी अरब लीडर्स इजराइल के लिए इजराइल को एक्सेप्टेबल कभी नहीं बनाया गया था। तो एक तरफ तो वो एजम्पशन है कि अरब्स कुछ भी कर सकते हैं पैलेस्टाइन के लिए, दूसरी तरफ वो एक एमर्जिंग डायनामिक है जहां पे एक एंटी ईरान एक्सिस का बनना हम देखते हैं। एक तरफ एजम्पशन है कि टर्की एक नेटो का पावर है और एक अमेरिकन एलाई है हिस्टोरिकली, दूसरी तरफ हम देखते हैं कि टर्की की इंक्रीजिंग हॉस्टिलिटी है अमेरिकन इंटरेस्ट्स को लेके। और उस सब के बीच में फिर ये डायनामिक है, ये जो नया बज़वर्ड मिल गया है अमेरिकन मीडिया को, स्पेसिफिकली डील ऑफ द सेंचुरी का जो नया फ्रेज मिल गया है ट्रंप एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन की तरफ से, which is nothing but an attempt by the Trump administration to force Israeli terms on the Palestinian conflict. उसको किसी तरह इजरायली टर्म्स पे उसको रिजॉल्व करने का एक कोअर्सिव पुश है। और इसमें सबसे इंटरेस्टिंग एस्पेक्ट ये है कि वही अरब लीडरशिप जो अरब पीस प्लान प्रेजेंट करती रही है, जो 67 के लाइन पे बॉर्डर्स और ईस्ट जेरूसलम को कैपिटल चाहती है, वही अरब लीडरशिप आज इस डील ऑफ द सेंचुरी के एम्बेसडर किसी हद तक बनते हुए दिखती है। वो जेरूसलम के ऊपर कॉम्प्रोमाइज करते हुए अरब स्टेट में परसीव की जाती है। तो ये जो डायनामिक्स हैं, जो मेस ऑफ कॉन्ट्रडिक्शंस है अरब वर्ल्ड का, तो हमारा ख्याल ये था इस डिस्कशन को रखने में कि हम कोई फैक्ट्स ऑन द ग्राउंड की रिपोर्टिंग यहाँ पे नहीं करना चाहेंगे, बल्कि हम चाहेंगे कि अरब वर्ल्ड को देखने के लिए, इस पूरे कॉन्फ्लिक्ट को देखने के लिए, समझने के लिए हमारा क्या पर्सपेक्टिव होना चाहिए, हमारा किस तरह का लेंस होना चाहिए। जो डोमिनेंट पर्सपेक्टिव है, जो वेस्टर्न मीडिया से पुश किया जाता है, उसके अलावा क्या तरीके हैं इस पूरे कॉन्फ्लिक्ट को देखने के, उसको समझने के लिए, और उस पर आपको कुछ ट्रुथ समझा देने के लिए नहीं, बल्कि आपके लिए कुछ पर्सपेक्टिव्स को खोलने के लिए आज इस पूरे डिस्कशन को रखा गया है। और मैं समझता हूँ हमारे आज के जो रिसोर्स पर्सन है, इस काम के लिए हमें इससे बेहतर कोई शख्स नहीं मिल सकता था। डॉक्टर ओमेर अनास इज अ PhD इन वेस्ट एशियन स्टडीज फ्रॉम जवाहरलाल नेहरू यूनिवर्सिटी। उनका एक लंबे अरसे से टर्किश और वेस्ट एशियन इश्यूज पे आप एक वेल नोन कमेंटेटर रहे हैं और फिलहाल आप टर्की में एक असिस्टेंट प्रोफेसर के तौर पे काम कर रहे हैं एंड वी आर वेरी प्लीज्ड के इत्तेफाक में आपके यहाँ पे आप आए और हमें मौका मिल गया कि कुछ वक्त हम आपका ले सकें और इस इशू पे बहुत सारे इंटरनेशनल रिलेशंस के स्टूडेंट्स हैं और भी बहुत से स्टूडेंट्स हैं जो इस इशू में जनरली इंटरेस्टेड हैं, तो उनसे ये डिस्कशन करने के लिए, गुफ्तगू स्टार्ट करने के लिए वी आर वेरी हैप्पी कि आप हमारे बीच में हैं। और अब बिना कोई और बिना ताखीर हम गुजारिश करेंगे कि आप अपनी गुफ्तगू की शुरुआत।
थैंक यू वेरी मच। अस्सलाम वालेकुम रहमतुल्लाहि व बरकातहू। सबसे पहले मैं शुक्रिया अदा करूँगा इंडो-पाल फाउंडेशन और CERT का, जिनके कोऑर्डिनेशन से आज का ये टॉक होने जा रहा है। तो जब इन्होंने ये टॉपिक रखा डील ऑफ सेंचुरी के बारे में बात करने के लिए, तो मैंने उनको ये कहा कि हम सिर्फ डील ऑफ सेंचुरी को अरब इजरायली कॉन्टेक्स्ट में, अरब इजरायली डिबेट के कॉन्टेक्स्ट में देखने की कोशिश ना करें। एंड बिकॉज मोस्ट ऑफ अस आर हियर स्टूडेंट ऑफ IR, इंटरनेशनल रिलेशंस, वी आर working on different subjects related to West Asia or the Middle East conflicts. So what we need is to understand these discussions in a very proper context, not just in a theoretical context, but also in a complete realist perspective in which the power struggle in the region is going on as of now. तो पहले तो मैं आपको ये बताता हूँ कि डील ऑफ सेंचुरी है क्या। बहुत ब्रीफली इसको बताने की ज़रूरत ये है कि अरब इजरायली कॉन्फ्लिक्ट का बेसिस ये था कि जब फ़लस्तीन पर पूरे ब्रिटेन का कब्ज़ा था और उसको मैंडेटरी गवर्नमेंट वो बोलते थे, तो उसके बाद यूनाइटेड नेशंस में उसको ले जाया गया और ये कहा गया कि अब ये मैंडेट को ख़त्म होना चाहिए और इसके बाद इसको एक इंडिपेंडेंट 2 एंटिटीज़ वहाँ पर बनेंगी, एक इजराइल होगी और एक पैलेस्टाइन होगा। पैलेस्टाइन विल बी फॉर अरब्स एंड इजराइल विल बी फॉर Jewish people. And a resolution in United Nations Security Council 181 was passed, and that resolution was opposed fiercely by the Arab states because they said that this is a completely denial of the right of self-determination. So on the basis of that, most of the Arab states had at that time they wanted to oppose it. They did not want to recognize the state of Israel or the existence of any state which was based on this denial of the self-determination of the Palestinian people. तो इस बेसिस पर 181 रेजोल्यूशन उस वक्त पास हुआ। देन ए वॉर फॉलोड और उसमें अरब्स को बुरी तरह से हारना पड़ा और जितना 181 रेजोल्यूशन में जितना अरब टेरिटोरीज यानी फ़लस्तीनी टेरिटोरी अप्रूव हुई थी, इजराइल ने उससे आगे बढ़ करके एक्स्ट्रा टेरिटोरी अपने कब्जे में कर ली। देन अनदर वॉर हैपन इन 1967, फिर उसके बाद एक और वॉर हुई। तो हर वॉर के बाद इजराइल अपनी टेरिटोरी को एक्सपैंड करता चला गया और उसमें बहुत सारे रीजंस बताते रहते हैं कि हम एक बहुत ही हॉस्टाइल नेबरहुड में रह रहे हैं, इसलिए हमें एक्सपेंशनिस्ट होकर ही रहना पड़ेगा। तो कई रेजोल्यूशन उसके बाद पास होते गए। 1967 के वॉर के बाद एक 242 का रेजोल्यूशन पास हुआ। उसमें ये क्लियरली बोला गया कि इजराइल मस्ट रिकग्नाइज नंबर 1 द राइट ऑफ रिटर्न टू ऑल रिफ्यूजीज, नंबर 2 इजराइल मस्ट गो इन प्री 1967 बॉर्डर। और इस बार ज़्यादातर अरब स्टेट्स और जो नॉन स्टेट एंटिटीज़ थी, स्पेशली द PLO, they come to a term and condition that okay, we are ready to accept this 181 as well as 242, प्रोवाइडेड कि जो हमारी 4 शर्तें हैं उसमें पैलेस्टीनियन नेशन स्टेट एक इंडिपेंडेंट एंटिटी के तौर पर एक्सेप्ट किया जाए, नंबर 2 राइट टू रिटर्न, जितने भी रिफ्यूजीज 1948 से लेकर के अभी तक जितने भी रिफ्यूजीज हैं वो जहाँ के भी हैं उनको वहाँ पर जाने की परमिशन दी जाए और उस राइट को सिक्योर किया जाए। और तीसरा ये था कि जेरूसलम को एज ए कैपिटल स्टेट जो है वो उसको माना जाए। और चौथी शर्त ये थी कि 1967 का जो से पहले का जो बॉर्डर है उस बॉर्डर में इजराइल अपने आप को विड्रॉ कर ले, पीछे कर ले। तो ये शर्तें इस बेसिस पर पैलेस्टीन मूवमेंट जो सेकुलर मूवमेंट था पीएलओ का, वो लगातार खा हो गया। उसके बाद ओस्लो हुआ और ओस्लो में ये बात तय पाई कि ठीक है, हम इसको मानते हैं और इस पीस प्रोसेस करना चाहिए। एट दैट टाइम इजराइल वाज रिकग्नाइज्ड बाय पीएलओ एंड Egypt also recognized, then Jordan recognized, and some other states recognized, and most of the Arab states, especially the Gulf countries, they had maintained a sacred relations with the state of Israel. And this secret is so obvious that it no longer is a secret. It is what we can say is a very open so-called secret. तो अब आप रीजन में देख सकते हैं कि जो पावर स्ट्रगल चल रहा है उसके मुताबिक वहाँ पर एक बहुत ही पावरफुल नेबर है ईरान के नाम से। ईरान का इंट्रोडक्शन हमें इसलिए अच्छी तरह से करना चाहिए कि ईरान एक बादशाही हुकूमत में था, उसके बाद वहाँ पर एक सो कॉल्ड इस्लामिक रिवोल्यूशन या शिया रिवोल्यूशन या पर्शियन रिवोल्यूशन के नाम से 79 में खुमैनी के अंडर में रिवोल्यूशन आया। तो उस वक्त पर्शियन रिवोल्यूशन ने ये डिसाइड किया कि वो स्टेट ऑफ इसराइल के खिलाफ एक रेटोरिक की पॉलिटिक्स को अडॉप्ट करेंगे और पैलेस्टाइन को आज़ाद कराने वाला एक बड़ा पॉलिटिक्स वो रीजन में करेंगे। जब हम इस तरह के रेटोरिक्स के गेम खेलते हैं तो इसमें ज़रूरी नहीं होता कि आप वो ऑब्जेक्टिव अचीव कर ही लें, लेकिन खुमैनी साहब की जो तकरीरें थी उसमें वो बहुत ज़्यादा ये कह रहे थे कि अरब स्टेट्स जो हैं वो वेस्टर्न डेमोक्रेसीज के पपेट्स हैं और वो कुछ नहीं करते हैं और वो पैलेस्टाइन को लिबरेट कराने के लिए कुछ भी नहीं कर सकते हैं। तो इसलिए वो लगातार प्रोवोक करने के लिए अरब स्टेट्स को उन्होंने एक प्रो पैलेस्टाइन रेटोरिक को अडॉप्ट किया और उस सेंस में उन्होंने बहुत ज़्यादा सपोर्ट भी किया कि बहुत सारे पैलेस्टीनियन ऑर्गेनाइजेशंस को उन्होंने सपोर्ट करना शुरू कर दिया आर्म्स के ज़रिए, पैसों के ज़रिए और ट्रेनिंग के ज़रिए। लेकिन जिस तरह से ईरान वहाँ पर बढ़ता गया और बहुत ही ताकतवर होता गया, उसके बाद से अरब स्टेट्स को ये डर लगने लगा कि ईरान उस रीजन में अरब स्टेट से ज़्यादा पावरफुल हो जाएगा। उस ज़माने में टर्की एक बहुत ही सेकुलर कंट्री हुआ करता था, कानूनी तौर पर भी और अमली तौर पर भी। जैसे आज भी बहुत ही सेकुलर है कानूनी तौर पर, अमली तौर पर थोड़ा कम हो गया है, लेकिन लीगली इट इज़ स्टिल वेरी वेरी सेकुलर कंट्री। तो उस ज़माने में टर्की से ज़्यादा उनको रिस्क नहीं था और टर्की ऑलरेडी 1949 में ही फौरन ही स्टेट ऑफ इसराइल को रिकग्नाइज कर चुका था, बिकॉज टर्की वॉज गोइंग टू बी पार्ट ऑफ NATO एंड वेस्टर्न अलायंस। एंड एट दैट टाइम टर्की वॉज कम्प्लीटली रूल्ड बाई ए वेरी सेकुलराइज्ड वेस्टर्नाइज्ड एलिट who had no sympathy in any Arab cause. And because the Palestinian issue was an Arab cause and most of the Arab at that time had betrayed the Ottoman Turkish Empire, so there was a very strong sense of betrayal among the Turkish people that these Arabs had not supported them and these Arabs had indeed betrayed them at that time. So they are not going to have any sorts of emotional or intellectual or ideological relations with these Arab states. So there was a very strong anti-Arab sentiment in Turkey at that time, and because of that they had no sympathy with the Palestinian state, but still they maintained a principal position. Okay, we are ready to accept the 181 resolution, Israel and Palestine side by side. So because of that fact, most of the Arab states, they did not face any threat, any problem with the Turkish state, but they indeed faced a lot of reservations from the behavior of the Iranian state, because Iranian state was indeed trying to spread and expand its influence beyond its territories, especially in the Arab states. And if you remember, you know very well Ahmadinejad and how he was using the rhetoric that Iran will wipe out the state of Israel from the world map. So Iran emerged as a strong threat perception. Later on in 2000, it was discovered that Iran is trying to develop some sort of nuclear capabilities. Iran initially tried to hide this fact, and then it recognized that it is trying to develop some sort of nuclear capabilities, but most of its capabilities are for nuclear energy. And at that time, Iran was a signatory of NPT regime, which required Iran to abide by international regulations on if it wants to enrich and develop some sort of nuclear capabilities. So it was discovered that Iran was secretly trying to do something with nuclear capabilities, and at that time sanctions followed, and so much international pressure came on Iran, and then the Arab states and Israel, they came united to demand the international community, especially the United Nations Security Council and the US, to put a lot of pressure on Iran so that Iran should backtrack from its nuclear ambitions. And this was a new beginning in the region against Iran. So most of the Arab states, they found an opportunity in this nuclear crisis to sideline the state of Iran and its expanding ambitions. There was another state which was Egypt, and when Anwar Sadat was killed, and after that Egypt came under the rule of Hosni Mubarak, and Hosni Mubarak liberalized its economy, and Anwar Sadat had already recognized the state of Israel, and he has already visited the state of Israel, and there was so much normalization of relation between the two states. But by doing so, Egypt was trying to assert its regional role. The Egyptian nationalism especially was not in position to accept the superiority of these Gulf Arab countries. Rather, Egypt was trying to develop and evolve its own leadership in the region. And that was not very much acceptable even for the Gulf countries. With Hosni Mubarak, the Gulf countries, they found an opportunity that they should have a new alliance with Egypt, and they should persuade Egypt that you should be with the Arab Gulf states, and you should not go beyond our security alliance. So during the Hosni Mubarak period, Egypt practically came into an ambit of the Persian Gulf regimes, and as a result, Egypt was no longer a champion of Arab nationalism, a champion of Arab causes, and most of the Arab causes, they transferred from Cairo to Saudi Arabia, to Riyadh and UAE. So it is how the Arab politics, it's the gravity of Arab politics, they transferred from Cairo to the Persian Gulf. And with immense power of petrodollars, the Arab states, they exercised and employed a lot of resources in all Muslim countries to assert their role and to claim all sorts of influence in these countries. And one of the things which they really wanted to do is to have some sort of relations with the state of Israel and to find a solution to the state of the perpetual state of conflict between Israel and the Arab states. And what was the motive of finding a solution between the state of Israel and the Arab states? In my opinion, and as Fawad has already said, that it was not to find a lasting peace. It was not for the favor of Palestinian people. Rather, the biggest benefit and the biggest motive of these Persian Gulf Arab countries in finding peace with the state of Israel was the sustenance and survival of their own regimes, which were very much at risk, number one, from an emerging Iran. And when Arab uprising happened, the Arab states, and especially the Gulf Arab states, they found in a very precarious situation that they saw that Egypt is falling down. They saw that Ben Ali from Tunisia has fled, and they saw that many Arab states and their Arab streets are boiling, and the masses are really protesting against their regimes, and they want greater rights and participation in their socio-political setups. So by these happenings, the Arab states, and especially the Persian Gulf Arab states, were frightened, and they thought that their end is coming very, very near. And at that time, Iran was very much into it, and Iran wanted to use these revolutions as to legitimize that look, the Iranian revolution was truly an Islamic revolution and a revolution to empower the Islamic and Arab people. And then Khamenei at that time, he correlated that, look, what happened in 1979 in Iran is now happening in Cairo and Tunis. So the Arab states were really frightened that Iran is trying to justify its revolution and will try to export its Islamic revolution, the so-called Islamic revolution, into the Arab states. And at that time they found that most of the Muslim Brotherhood groups in the region, they were having so much sympathy with Iran, and they were trying to establish some sort of emotional and intellectual relations with Iran, so that they can have a greater Islamic Brotherhood all over the region. And that was going to be a real danger for the Arab states, especially for Saudi Arabia. So I'm trying to give you a context that how Iran became a bigger threat for this region, even bigger than Israel. But what happened in 2011 late, especially after March, April, that the Syrian revolution got from a peaceful protest movement into a militant and violent movement, and a kind of civil war situation happened, and Iran found that the wave of revolution which were coming from all over the Arab world, and now it is going to happen in Syria, and in Syria it is going to inflict some sort of strategic damage on Iran. What was the strategic damage which Iran was going to face in Syria was particularly in 2003 US invasion of Iraq. State of Iraq was literally gifted to Iran by the US, and US wanted Iran to play a greater role. They maintained so much hostility, but in Iraq they maintained so much cooperation that Iranian security agents and Iranian security agencies were allowed to operate all over Iraq, and they eliminated all sorts of Iraqi scientists, Iraqi skilled workforce, so that Iraq, especially among the Sunnis, everyone who was very close to Saddam and Ba'ath Party regime, and if he happened to be a scientist, he was immediately eliminated, either by Mossad of Israel or by the agents of Iranian intelligence. So in this way, the Iraqi power and Iraq's state capability was completely destroyed by both Israel and Iran. So people, they got to know that Iran is trying to exert its influence across the region. And the word which at that time was being used, that Iran is trying to introduce a sort of Shia crescent. A Shia crescent which will start from Iran and will go over to Iraq and will cross Syria and will come over from Jordan to Saudi Arabia. So a crescent was really going to be realized, and this fear was so much appearing very close for these Arabian regimes. And when Syrian revolution happened, then Iran found that the Shia crescent which they wanted to build was going to be hampered, because any regime which is going to replace Bashar al-Assad's Ba'athist regime is not going to be in the same way very close to their Shia conception than Bashar al-Assad is now. So even though Bashar al-Assad was not Shia, he was not Sunni, he was an Alawite, he's an Alawite, but they found that there is an opportunity of greater cooperation, and there have been always a very close cooperation between Iran and Bashar al-Assad. Even if you remember in 1984 when Hama massacre happened and 30,000 Syrians and especially the members of Muslim Brotherhood were killed at that time, Khomeini had not spoken a single word in condemning these Hama massacre. And he indeed, in a sacred letter which was written to Bashar al-Assad, he expressed some sort of grief and dismay, but he did not condemn, and he did not ask the Assad regime that you should not have done it and you should have delivered some sort of justice. So it was known that for Iran, Syria is not a case of Islamic revolution. They did not want Islamic revolution in Syria. They wanted Islamic revolution everywhere else, but they did not want the same sort of Islamic revolution in any country which in their view was ruled by either a Shia sect or a sect which is close to Shia sect. So in this way, the strategic dream of having a Shia crescent was being hampered by the civilian revolution. So they started pumping their all resources into Syria so that they could stop the imminent collapse of Assad regime. So they succeeded in stopping the collapse of Assad regime, and by doing so they also succeeded in introducing so many military installments all over the Syria. So they thought that if they expand their military capabilities inside Syria, and they have so many military bases and installations there, so in future they can have some sort of confrontation with any hostile power, including State of Israel or Saudi Arabia. So now you have a picture in which Iran is very close to both capitals, the Saudi capital Riyadh and the Israeli capital Tel Aviv. So if Iran is indeed inside Syria and it has so much influence in Iraq, so it means that, and you know about Lebanon. Lebanon is already in very much influence of Iranian regime. So Saudi Arabia and Israel, they were very much in fear that things are going to be very, very bad for them. So their cooperation and the realist urge between these two states was working, and they thought that they should have greater cooperation, but they cannot have any sorts of open cooperation, because any open cooperation is going to hamper and going to disturb their public opinion. So to justify this cooperation, now there was a big need that there is indeed some sorts of recognition by Israel that they should give some concessions to the state of Palestine. So in a very hurried way, especially in the Trump administration, they worked out on a formula that they should do something for Israel and Palestine. Now let us talk about Israel. What Israel wanted to do always was, from day one, they never wanted a state of Palestine. They never wanted a independent state of Palestine. Even in all wars, in all conflicts, in all statements, you can very consistently see that from day one, Israel was never committed to two-state solution. And they always believed that by military means, by military capabilities, they can stop any emergence of an independent state of Palestine. And they believed in the language of power, that by developing their own military powers and capabilities, they can stop any such thing. And in all three wars which happened between Israel and the Arab states, it was proven that Israeli military capabilities was going to be very decisive. And they invested so heavily in their defense sector and in their military capabilities that today they have become the world's second biggest arms suppliers and defense supplier. Countries like Russia, countries like China, countries like India, which are very, very big countries, and Israel is nothing before these countries, but they have become real importer of a tiny state of Israel. So in today's condition, Israel has become a very formidable ally for many countries, many big countries, and its military capabilities have become a compulsion for Arab states and for other countries. It was in 2005 to 10 and maybe 5 to 12, you will find so much literature on the rise of rest of countries which were against the Western countries, especially China and India and Russia and Africa and Brazil, because there were discussions that these countries are really going to challenge the hegemony of Western politics in all over the world. So in this way, these countries were in a position to introduce a new international system. and a new international system which will be based more on justice and equality and respect and greater justice for the oppressed communities such as of Palestinian people. But when the BRICS organization was found and when SCO was found, some of the Arab states, they realized that they thought that maybe these regional countries are going to challenge the hegemony of NATO and other Western countries organizations. But in reality, what happened gradually was that when these countries, Russia, India, Iran, and Brazil, and Africa, sorry, not Africa, but all these three countries, they maintained very, very close military relations. Then it became very clear that these regional organizations, both BRICS and SCO, they are not going to help the state of in the emergence of a state of Palestine. Because if you have 10 billion, 20 billion exchange of military cooperation, which means that Palestine is no longer an important issue for you. Palestine is indeed an important issue, but it is an issue of charity. You want to give them $50 million, $20 million, some schools, some institutions, some scholarships, but you do not want to promise them a real state of Palestine. So in this way, you could see that there was an upcoming betrayal by the rise of West. The other countries, the non-Western countries, the non-Western powers, especially all these 3-4 countries which I just mentioned. In my opinion, these countries are not going to help in any way. They are not going to put any pressure on these countries, on Israel, to support and to accept the state of Palestine. So it means that there is a Western bloc which has already betrayed the state of Palestine. There is a non-Western bloc which has also betrayed the dream of Palestinian state. So who is left? Now only the Arab states are left. And for the Arab states, their own survival, the regime's survival, became more important than any other thing. But that thing also came into question when the Arab uprising happened. And at that time, they realized that even they cannot perpetuate, they cannot continue that sort of conflict, because if they continue that conflict and they maintain an opposition to the state of Israel, it means that their own streets are going to boil and to descend against these regimes, and ultimately their regimes will be collapsing very soon. So this kind of international situation brought them to a sense that they should sign any sorts of cooperation. Whatever minimum thing they are going to get, they are going to accept it. So in this sense of desperation, this sort of deal of century is one of the most humiliating deal which is going to be imposed on the people of Palestine and the region. That is why now you have to focus on other regional players who are not coming into this deal. Number one, Palestinian people. Palestinian people, since first day, they have said that they are not going to accept any sorts of this deal. They are not going to accept this deal because it is not accepting the terms and conditions which the Palestinian movement, even the PLO and Hamas, they have been believing in, and they have been struggling for these causes, especially the 4 causes which I just mentioned: the right to return of refugees, and the status of Jerusalem as a final capital of the state of Palestine, and the independent entity of state of Palestine, and the last one was 1967, pre-1967 border. So these 4 conditions have been removed by this deal. This deal very precisely proposed there should be just one state, state of Israel. There should be a new sub-state. Sub-state means there will be a territory which will be called as Palestine, but most of its security control will be under the state of Israel, and its economic and cultural and so-called political things will be taken care by the state of Palestine, but security issues will be completely under the state of Israel. For Jerusalem, they proposed that only the location of Al-Quds Mosque, it will be narrowed and it will be given for use of Arabs, but it will also be open for Jewish people. And there will be built some kind of corridor in which the Arabs can come and go, but most of the Jerusalem will be cut off. Practically it will be cut off by walls and by other fences, so that there is no transaction of population between the cut off city and the Jerusalem and the main city. Then they also propose that there will be a small area which is in Jerusalem. It is called as Addis. I think this will be developed as a capital city of Palestinian state, and it will be renamed as Al-Quds. Even though it is not Al-Quds, but it will be renamed as Al-Quds, so that the Muslims and the Arabs, they get a sense of satisfaction that okay, they have even an artificial Al-Quds. So they thought that Muslims are going to be so dumb and so humiliated and so much forced that they are going to accept even this kind of fake capital and fake sense of freedom and statehood. So this is the package of this deal of century, which is having all these things inside it. And they expect the Palestinian people that they should sign it and they should accept it, and they should accept it wholeheartedly. But the Palestinian people, with its all organization, including Hamas and the leader of Fatah and PLO, Mahmoud Abbas, they all have rejected this deal, and they said they are not going to accept it. So now there is a big crisis. The main party of the conflict is not going to accept it. And from here, a new politics is started. If the main politics is not on your card, it means that you have to persuade them. There cannot be any peace between Arab states and Israel if the main party, Palestinians, are not there. So as of now, Palestinians are not there. But can they afford so much opposition to these very rich Arab states, especially Saudi Arabia and the UAE? Saudi Arabia and UAE are the main engineer of this deal. Iran, yes, they do not recognize this deal, and Turkey does not recognize this deal. So today's Turkey is in a very strong position, and it has been influencing the Arab states very much. But the problem is that the credibility of Iranian politics has gone very, very down. There is almost this agreement in all Arab streets and even among Muslim streets that the regime which is in Tehran is not an Islamic regime. You are a Persian nationalist regime. Yes, you are anti-Israeli. Yes, you have some type of anti-Western politics, but you are not the same Iranian regime which you used to claim during the time of revolution. So there is a lack of credibility and trust about the state of Iran. So who is going to play an important role? It means that then Turkey is going to play an important role. So as of now, you will see that there is so much diplomatic efforts in Turkey, that Turkey is trying to establish its context in Jordan, other Arab countries, and it is trying to compromise trying to create a compromise formula between PLO and Hamas, so that they can jointly oppose this sort of deal. As of now, Turkey has not made any official statement on this deal, this so-called deal, because the deal itself has not been made public. So whatever we are listening about this deal is from media sources, and because the son-in-law of Trump, and he has been traveling to these Arab countries, and he's trying to he has been trying to persuade these Arab regimes of this deal. So whatever we know about this deal is from unofficial media references. But this is a clear thing that this deal is going to be very much pro-Israeli deal. Now, we have to question what is the final solution of this Arab-Israeli conflict. Apparently, if you see, Israel has already taken a large swath of Palestinian territories. So practically, I don't think there is any territory which we can call as Palestine. There is no Palestine. What we call as Gaza, and we add a word patti in Hindi and strip in English, but it is no longer a strip even. It is just a Gaza, and it is a jail of some 1 million people, which is becoming very much suffocated area. Then West Bank is literally it is a mohalla in which all the Gunda people are controlling everything, and the biggest Gunda there are the Israeli military. So and Mahmoud Abbas, the so-called president of Palestinian Authority, is no powerful more than a councillor of maybe like Oklahoma. So he does not enjoy that much power. So there is no Palestine. In this situation, what kind of deal can be achieved? If you really believe in an international system, then you must have to say that any deal should be on the basis of the United Nations Security Resolutions. And the United Nations Security Resolution says that very clearly, and all the resolutions, not just one, from 181 to 242 and more than maybe 60 resolutions, they have been saying that there should be a state of Israel, a state of Palestine, side by side with the state of Israel on the basis of these 4 conditions. And when the 2 of conditions have already been rejected, have been made impossible, then it means that any deal which is coming into future will be on the basis of forcing state of Israel to go back from the occupied territories to its original borders, which were given to the state of Israel in according to the resolution 181, the original resolution. But the international system is not favorable, and international system is not in favor of the forces who really desire and who really want this sort of resolution according to these UNSC resolutions. So it means that we are in a situation in which international system is not at all in favor of a state of Palestine, not in favor of Palestinian organization, not in favor of Palestinian people. It is completely and so shamelessly biased for a state of Israel. Very openly it is biased for a state of Israel. Unapologetically it is biased for a state of Israel, which means that the state of Palestine cannot emerge without having a very principled struggle. Number 1, against Israel. Number 2, for public opinion in international community, so that they can reassert their support for this United Nations Security Council resolutions. And the internationally strong, very, very strong international community, which really force the state of Israel that you should go back to your 1967 border, before the pre-1967 border, and you should accept the state of Palestine. Exactly in the same sense as it was promised in the resolution 181. Without that, the real state of Palestine is not coming. So, as of now, this scenario is completely impossible. It cannot come. So, what they are going to do? For Palestinians, especially for Hamas, even for Mahmoud Abbas, they want to continue their struggle. They are still saying that we will continue our struggle. This deal is not going to even benefit these Arab states. And this has been coming in the minds of Egyptians now. If you see the regional scenario, Egyptians have started thinking that this deal is not going to benefit Egypt. Why? The Gaza Strip, this deal requires that the Gaza Strip will be evacuated, will be taken over by Israelis, and the population will be transferred into Sinai. Or the part of Gaza will be taken into Sinai province. So it means that the state of Palestine is going to be balkanized, divided. One part is already with Jordan, one major part is already under the Israeli occupation, and one part is now going to Egypt. So there is no Palestine. With this proposal, Egyptian authorities are not happy, because if they accept this formula, this will be a black blot on their forehead forever, that they had betrayed the Palestinian people, and what they have as part of Palestinian population in Sinai is nothing but a sign of humiliation and defeat. So the Egyptian people, and in their political narratives, it is never going to be accepted. Even if officially you are going to accept it, but you can never justify it to your local people. How will you write a new history? How will you write a new political vocabularies? And how you are going to justify the Israeli aggressions and the dispersal of Palestinian population into many sublet states? So this is not going to be accepted by the Egyptian people, and so there is a sense of disappointment and sense of dissatisfaction among the Egyptian politicians as well, that they have not yet endorsed this sort of a deal. So Iranians are not going to accept it, Egypt is not going to accept it, and Turkey is not going to accept it. And then Saudi Arabia finally got disappointed that the detail of the deal have been made public, and the Saudi people are not very happy. So in November or December, the Saudi King Salman was reported that he is upset. I don't know if he is in a position to be upset, but it was reported that he was upset, so he wanted to reverse all this political dialogue about this deal of century. And then Kushner's visit was postponed, and it was renegotiated. And then Khashoggi affair happened in Turkey, and there was a lot of pressure on Saudi Arabia that they have to do some other things to satisfy their own population. So as of now, this deal is really in a cold storage, and it is not going to be introduced anytime soon. And there is so much pressure on the Trump administration himself, and because he is Trump administration, and Trump himself is a man of controversies, so he cannot live without these controversies. So the next phase in American politics is going to be Trump's own controversies, and he's going to be dragged in, maybe in court as well, and some other big controversies, especially the future controversies are going to be very much determining controversies for his re-election in 2020. So I think, in my opinion, this deal of century is going to be, as many journalists have already explained, that this is a deal of brought dead, which is already dead before its arrival. But all this process has given a sense of alarm to all the people who really love Palestine. The number one sign of alarm is that Palestine and Palestinian politics can be sold out. These Arab states can do anything for their own survival with this issue of Palestine. And because we know that these Arab states can do anything to this state of Palestine, they can do any sorts of compromise on this issue. So there is a greater need that the state of that the issue of Palestine is made from an Arab issue into an Islamic and human issue. There is greater need that countries like India and other non-Western countries and even Western countries and European countries, they should take greater interest into the issue of Palestine. Because if they do not show some interest, and I'm not talking only about the states, also about the people, Indian people and other countries' people, Chinese and Russians, they have to show greater solidarity, greater support for the state of Palestine, so that any deal and any compromise, any humiliating defeat of such type and such kind should be and must be stopped. Otherwise, these Arab states are going to do anything with this very important cause. The second message which this deal has given us is that these Arab states, especially Saudi Arabia and UAE, their politics, they do not have any real template to provide regional security for this region. They don't have any sense of regional security even. What they have in the name of security, regional security, is at best the security of Mohammed bin Salman. They think that the security of Mohammed bin Salman is the security of region. The security of Mohammed bin Salman is security of Islam. The security of Mohammed bin Salman is security of everything. So if this is a kind of sense in any country's politics, which means that it is going to hamper so many things. So as a result, there should be a very serious effort by regional countries to revise and to rewrite the regional security architecture in this region. And that is where, in my proposition, the role of Iran is going to be very important. Even though there is a possibility of strong criticism of the role which Iran has played in Syria and Iraq and other countries, but still Iran is a part of the region. Iran cannot be done away from this region. It cannot be removed from the region. It is going to stay there. So the Iranian participation into the Arab-Israeli conflict, and especially in the Palestinian conflict, is going to be very important. And if there is a cooperation between Iran and Turkey and Jordan and other Arab states who are not satisfied with such sort of compromises, I think that there is going to be an increasing pressure on the state of Israel, that the state of Israel is going to be isolated by these countries and going to be a lot of pressure on these countries. And if you see what is happening between Turkey and America, that Turkish people, they have sent very clear messages to the American politicians that they cannot wait for Americans for their green lights in each and every decisions. If there is a crisis in Turkey or if there is a crisis for Turkish security, Turkish people are going to go ahead alone. They will not wait for Americans. They will not wait for American support. So they are going there alone. If this risk is going to be increasing in the future, it means that American security in the region is going to decrease. And American politics is going to face a real danger of losing the status of world leader, and the next leadership may go with China or with Russia or with any other country. So if Americans have to really preserve their status of world leader and an important role in the Middle East, so they must have to be very careful of playing with Palestinian issue. So I think that there are some lessons which have already been learned by many American politicians, and they are not going to support this sort of deal, and they are rather going to reassert some sort of pressure on the state of Israel that you have to come back on the two-state formula solution, and you have to offer a solution which is going to create an independent state of Palestine according to 181 and 242 resolutions. So this is precisely what I have to say about this so-called broad dead deal. And maybe in question answer we can talk a bit more, and I can explain some more situations.